The town of Valman was in an uproar as a level 3 green slug attacked passers-by, sending a farmer and his level 3 son running around in panic as the father desperately called out to the boy, who called back. The narrative goes on to explain that in ancient times, monsters did not exist at all, but their sudden appearance turned almost 80% of the land into zones unsuitable for life, where huge creatures and helpless people wage a fierce struggle. Next, it is said that representatives of the 8 gifted classes hunter, cleric, warrior, fighter, rogue, merchant, wizard are considered gifted, and it is these classes that determine the future path of each person in life at birth. The king is then shown standing in the center between the hero and the sage, and it is clarified that those who attain third-class skills are considered truly chosen among all the people. Next, a man at a cracked wall warns someone not to come close, and the story reminds us that the weakest class includes people barely capable of physical work and employed in the hotel business or city construction. Suddenly, a giant creature bursts out of the water, stunning the man and boy, who call out to each other again in confusion as the creature lunges forward. Ralph, noticing what was happening, leans closer, clarifies the condition of his interlocutor and, in order to help, throws water around, showing genuine concern. Meanwhile, Cain, holding a small bag, assures them that everything is fine, and then thanks them for the stone he found, which he hands over to the peasants, causing them to express their sincere gratitude and surprise at the unexpected rescue. Cain informs the local boy that he was awarded 100 bronze coins for defeating the slug, and happily notes that this is a good result, while the young man is perplexed, because, according to him, the peasant is in principle incapable of defeating the green slug, even if the money received is enough for sweets and toys. The next boy asks if the savior is a hero, after which the man, feeling regret, decides to return to the city, but the boy sharply demands to know who he really is. Koji calmly explains that the peasant is the weakest of all the classes, but the two men are shocked to learn that he is level 999, and he himself calmly mentions that they will be serving meat for dinner today. In bustling Valman, a young man strolls slowly down the street, nibbling on bread, while people gather around the fountain and discuss how tired they are of living among monsters that force even children to take up swords. Ralph passionately declares that the demon spawn must be defeated to restore peace to the world, while a girl standing nearby listens silently, and passers-by express doubts and ponder whether to join the noisy group. 3 men argue about whether they can raise their levels. One warns against foolishness, as they are just peasants, but the other claims that a high level can make them truly strong. Deep in an ancient cave, Cain spots a blue demon, declares his target, and instantly deals him a powerful blow without wasting a second. He then wonders why there are so many monsters today and muses that he should find the summoning block before it collapses, otherwise new monsters will spawn endlessly. Cain confidently deals with the enemies, claiming that thanks to his strength he can complete many tasks, and, checking the situation ahead, notices several more monsters approaching. Ralph urges Rex to move on while Cain suffers from back pain, but the entire group is convinced that they are continuing on the right path despite the danger posed by the demon castle. Cain suddenly notices a cluster of creatures and exclaims that he has discovered some kind of group, but quickly realizes that someone has unceremoniously taken his blue demon, and another participant in the discussion notes that this is even better, asking about the next goal. Then Cain, watching the monsters fight in the water, rejoices at a successful throw, and the story explains that the blue demon's horn is a rare reagent capable of suppressing the aggression of any creature towards its owner. He felt lucky after a string of victories over rare monsters and calculated that there were only 3 blue demons left in the quest. He then realized he could complete the task ahead of schedule and even imagined sushi for dinner, though he doubted the portions would be generous. Meanwhile, a hooded figure moved ahead along the rocky passage, and the dark-haired youth watched her, wondering why she was there at all. Then he called out to her, continuing to follow her down the narrow tunnel. The next minute, Cain noticed the child running quickly towards the monsters, and, overcome with anxiety, demanded that they stop immediately and return, but the child walked towards the creatures as confidently as if he did not see any danger at all. The young man turned around in confusion, trying to comprehend what was happening, and the hulking creature wondered if they had fallen asleep. Then he turned to face the creature, and a tense pause fell between them. Ralph angrily lashed out at Cain, feeling ignored, while the monster calmly said goodbye and retreated into the darkness of the corridor. Afterward, Cain hesitated, debating whether to pursue it. A few minutes later, he noticed a faint light in the distance and assumed it might be the exit. However, he then realized he had lost sight of the girl. She was moving too quickly. Realizing this, he hurried further down the stone corridor. Two massive monsters greeted him with a furious roar, and Kane had a hard time holding back the onslaught of one of them, mentally noting that there were suspiciously many monsters in this place. Then he suddenly responded to a child's cry and, breaking through the wall, found himself in the next room. There, he wondered if it was the same girl crying and tried to discern the source of the sound. A skinny girl in a hood loudly declared that this territory belonged to the royal family, which left the man with the sword and the two women genuinely confused. Ralph asked with displeasure whether anyone had left anything important there, and a girl standing nearby turned pitifully to her father, holding back the tears that were welling up. Kane persistently asked those present why they had attacked her, while the girl standing nearby, surrounded by clouds of flame, watched what was happening with growing alarm. Kagami Kuji admitted he was merely a passerby and a member of the peasant class, which greatly surprised the others. One of them claimed such a person could not have survived such an attack, further surprising Kuji. Alicia added that even if you forget about Kane's class, the girl still looks like a real demon, and he was forced to agree with this conclusion. After this, Kane turned to the young stranger, demanding to know what exactly she was hiding, and she nervously clutched her head with her hands, as if she was afraid to reveal the truth. Rex confidently called himself a hero, while Tina tried to clarify if everything was alright, noting the abundance of monsters around, and Palna urged Rex to continue their journey. Akam, exhausted beyond belief, asked to stop, and the witch nearby advised her not to overdo it. The girl admitted she hadn't expected such an outcome, but had always dreamed of freeing humanity from the Demon King's oppression. The narrative then reminded us that there were once more than 196 countries on the world map, but after the appearance of demons and monsters, only 3 states remained alive. Flora explained that the Demon King's armies had seized their lands, and now they must reclaim what they had lost for the sake of peace and prosperity. Alicia agreed, noting that the shrinking habitable lands only increased this need. Ralph called the girl Kuchan, but she asked him not to address her that way and introduced herself as Kanazuki Kururu of Hexeldoria. After that, the other girl happily announced her name, Tina. Ahead, someone found a glowing symbol and noticed that the cave continued further, hinting at a new part of the path awaiting explorers. A woman in a wide-brimmed witch's hat asked if the item they needed for their quest was right there, and a warrior in armor standing nearby smiled confidently. Then a third participant raised his hand and offered to explain everything in detail. Rex, who had reached hero level 90, pointed to the shining sacred blade in the depths of the cave. He noted that, according to an old legend, only a hero of level 90 could wield it, and the others watched the sword with awe. Meanwhile, the group moved along a narrow stone corridor, where one of their comrades announced that their destination was near. Afterward, the man told his companion how he had learned from the king details about Kururu, the princess of these lands. The hooded figure dropped abruptly to its knees, shocked by what it had just heard, and asked in dismay if someone was truly missing. Then it reacted with a mixture of disbelief and confusion. The same figure suddenly declared that he was using magical power, and the girl next to him inquired in bewilderment at his actions. Meanwhile, the 3 armored knights standing behind her visibly tensed. Ralph called out to Rex-sama, pointing to a girl in a dark cloak standing alone, looking anxious. Someone watching quietly muttered the word demon, and the tension intensified. The shocked hooded girl realized the sacred sword was missing and demanded to know how the demon could dare steal such an important relic. She desperately insisted that this place belonged to the royal family, but the armored warrior abruptly declared it not meant for the likes of her. After that, another participant attempted to smooth over the escalating conflict. Then Ralph demanded to know what was going on, angrily, and rushed forward with impressive force, his cloak fluttering dramatically behind him. The girl, holding back her trembling, asked who he was, and the young man merely scratched his head and remarked that he was an ordinary passing peasant, trying to understand her hint. Kane calmly confirmed that he belonged to the peasant class, and the girl standing behind him was surprised by this statement. Then the others accused him of lying and demanded proof, lining up before him with deepening suspicion. Luna expressed strong distrust, declaring that such a man was completely unreliable. She then suggested that he was deliberately protecting the demon girl, and another companion demanded to know what they were trying to steal. Ralph quickly explained that the girl was his younger sister, not a demon at all. This surprised the 2 women in witch hats, who asked if she had been born with horns. He then nervously admitted that he had made the accessories himself and attached them directly to his head, while Kane, Alicia, and Flora listened to him with genuine surprise. Kane quickly showed off the item in his hand, claiming that the jewelry was made from the horn of a blue demon, which explained its magical properties. After this, Kane walked away, leaving behind the smoking throne, and Ralph explained that in front of them was a legendary pedestal with a hidden sacred sword, and not an ordinary artifact that could be destroyed by force. Ralph tried to continue his explanation, insisting it was all quite simple, but the girl found his words absurd and doubted they would convince anyone. Kane, meanwhile, watched their argument in amazement. Ralph, irritated, asked what his sister was doing in that room, and Kane, chuckling, noted to himself that the description suited her perfectly. Then Luna declared they didn't wish to discuss the matter further, and Kane added that the issue of the sacred sword remained a separate matter. He angrily emphasized that the coincidence of her fall had nothing to do with the disappearance of the relic, although the situation looked suspicious. The black-haired man said thoughtfully that all the noise was clearly connected to the wielder of the sacred sword. At that moment, the blond man in shining armor loudly proclaimed himself the chosen hero, and the man accompanying the girl quietly explained that, according to legend, only one can wield this blade. Ralph admitted his own mistake and said that he had recently found a sacred sword and managed to sell it, after which the older man clarified how much he received for such a relic. The youth casually asked what to do now, and the stunned knight spoke of the sacred blade of the royal dynasty and fiercely rejected the possibility that a simple peasant could touch it, repeating that only a hero could lift it. Then Kane confidently declared that he had simply taken the throne, and had not stolen it at all, and then lifted it without difficulty, demonstrating his strength, which caused genuine shock among those around him. After this, Ralph lifted a huge boulder over his head, proving the opposite, and the three companions watched him in the rocky wasteland with surprise and various emotions. Someone was dumbfounded when they saw the enemy's level, and then the narration explained that the only way to level up was by defeating creatures that were superior in strength, showing Rex engaging in battle with the 100th monster. He noted that he had never heard of peasants above level 30, as it was pointless for them to risk their lives trying to go beyond their class and head to the front lines. The armored warrior demanded to know how a mere peasant had overcome such a limit, mentioning a legendary level 253 hero. The dark-haired man calmly replied that he fought monsters daily. Kane added that he'd won more than anyone else, even during voluntary training, but another participant countered that beating them was no different. Kane told him not to complicate matters. Then Kaiji flared up, demanding that they stop arguing, and declared that he didn't care, because that's how life works, and everyone just has to accept it. Kane thoughtfully asked Ralph about his intentions regarding the girl, assuming that he was going to challenge the Demon King, but Ralph called his sister with him, assuring her that she should walk alongside him. He reflected on the simple life and making a living, hinting that fighting the Demon King was a task for heroes, and Kane reacted to this with genuine bewilderment and indignation. They stood back to back, and Ralph tried to suggest his own route, but Kane noticed he had absolutely no understanding of how this world worked. Then they both turned around simultaneously, feeling the tension growing. The girl called out to the confused young man, and he began to think internally, trying to understand what was happening to him, until her voice gently brought him back to reality. Ralph awkwardly admitted that he had missed something important, and Alicia reminded him that the sacred sword belonged to the royal family and invited him to join their squad to fight the Demon King. Another girl asked why he was refusing help, given his strength, and was surprised by his confidence in his ability to do what no one else could. Meanwhile, he politely held the hand of a small child. Kane shook his head, insisting he'd never thought so, and then the woman offered to help retrieve the relic, urging them to put the dispute behind them. The three companions were genuinely surprised by this turn of events. Flora anxiously asked if he was seeking fame or fortune, or if he wished to save those suffering under the oppression of demons, reminding him of his responsibility. He admitted he wasn't seeking recognition, but was willing to help those in need. She then declared that wasn't enough and solemnly promised to marry him after defeating the Demon King, leaving him confused. The girl, her eyes downcast, acknowledged that she had been rejected again, and the boy holding the younger girl in his arms asked why this had happened, standing against the stone wall. Luna expressed doubt that defeating the Demon King was a feat and said she had no desire to fight or help. She then asked everyone not to worry about her feelings, preferring to remain aloof. Flora demanded to know the logic behind what was happening, but Kane insisted that what had been said earlier made sense, and the others listened to him with varying degrees of bewilderment, trying to grasp the general meaning. Ralph told the girl that her words wouldn't mean anything until she understood them herself, and his little companion asked the witch to at least give a hint. Then the young heroine recalled the mention of people who suffer more than others. When they left, she irritably repeated that the insolent man claimed that she did not understand anything in this world, and the warrior in armor insisted that he had to become stronger even than that peasant, although he himself could hardly imagine what kind of person was in front of him. Meanwhile, Kane noticed that dusk was already falling over the ruins, then sneezed and admitted that it had become cooler and more pleasant. The girl next to him was surprised, but still tried to keep up the conversation. A moment later, she excitedly declared that he was the one she was looking for, but he only looked confused. Then, almost in a whisper, she asked him to help her as they stood on the rocky slope. Elsewhere, a man roughly scolded a boy, telling him to act like a peasant and work instead of endlessly trying to kill monsters, but he confidently replied that he could throw stones from afar and not feel fear. Kagami Koji, a junior farmer, happily announced that his level had risen to 3 and decided to keep trying despite the others not believing that a farmer could progress that much. Kane, however, enthusiastically asserted that hunting monsters was far more rewarding than any fieldwork, and he moved forward with noticeable enthusiasm. Kagami, unaware that defeating creatures could earn him money, swung his sword and struck another opponent, watching as coins fell from the air. This immediately revealed that such an income was many times greater than the typical peasant's earnings. However, he soon began to wonder why monsters left money at all, and, holding the coin in his hands, he looked at it in bewilderment, trying to figure out the origin of this strange reward. With the landscape destroyed, the girl excitedly told the boy that he was the one she had been looking for and that she wanted him to be her husband, standing before him with determination. Kane reacted with surprise, while Luna nervously asked what exactly the child was carrying and why the demon needed a sacred sword, after which Kane unexpectedly admitted that the child was his father. The girl remembered how her father had begun to fall ill, and how she had heard rumors of a hero traveling with a blade, fearing that the sacred sword might kill him if it fell into the hands of someone who considered it fate. The young man raised his head and asked if a hero could really strike down someone's father with a sacred weapon, and then wondered what it would be like to be considered a demon king. Kane hesitated and said something hesitant, after which the boy looked at him with confusion, and the girl explained that he was not a demon king at all, but something else, much more complex. Then Kane reacted sharply, truly stunned, and the girl hastened to apologize, adding that she had never tried to hide it from him on purpose. She then asked if the old man had a daughter and was surprised that the boy knew her father. He wondered if that was why she didn't want to fight him. Kane, visibly worried, asked to explain why demon horns could create monsters, and Ralph, completely frightened, said that it was a temporary problem and it had already been solved, at least for now. Ralph, peering out from behind a tree, declared he knew all about demon horns and asked if her birth as a demon was her own fault. He emphasized that she was no different from humans, and Alicia listened with surprise and slight hesitation. Millie said with genuine passion that she wanted to see if humans and demons could live together, and if such a possibility existed, she was ready to go all the way, believing in a common world. Ralph admitted that he had been too blunt and then explained the reason for her desire for marriage, after which Kane was surprised to realize that there was a child involved and the situation was much more complicated than he had thought. One of the participants in the conversation stood his ground, claiming that what he had planned was impossible, while the other looked at him with wide eyes, and the tension between them quickly grew. The discussion then turned to the fact that even if the demons stopped attacking, the monsters would still threaten humans, and humans would continue to harbor hatred, while the demons, in turn, would begin to curse humanity. The girl hesitantly said that even if demons create monsters, many understand that demons are little different from humans. Meanwhile, the young man, leaning against a tree, listened silently as she tried to express her doubts. He quietly noted that it was a reflection of the complex and contradictory structure of this world, where the boundaries between right and wrong are almost invisible. When asked why Kane reasoned like that, he called himself a fool with annoyance, and Luna just shook her head, not understanding what was going on in his head while he walked away. After some time, Kane stood by Velman's wall and announced that he had finally accomplished what he had planned. Then a disgruntled voice asked how much longer he intended to drag his companion along. He asked if she had come for the medicine, and the girl nervously replied that this was the only city where she could get the medicine for her father, but she had absolutely no money, which is why she was confused. Then Kane asked her why she didn't hate people, and she, visibly surprised, replied that she wasn't at all obliged to feel hatred if she didn't feel such a need. Kane froze, struck by her words, and Flora quietly said that in the end they really were more alike than it seemed at first glance. Kane met the girl in the forest, and she, casting a quick glance at him, wondered if they really were alike, and he noted to himself that he had never heard such thoughts from demons before. Then the young man laughed and asked if she really thought she was a little demon, and she admitted that he looked unusual to her, and a mixture of surprise and interest flashed between them. He recalled his father's words, saying that hope exists as long as such people are found. And though they were in the minority, Alicia confidently declared that she had no intention of backing down, casting him a determined look. Kane considered this, deciding it was too dangerous to send the child back to the castle alone. However, if the journey didn't take too long, it might be an acceptable option. Then he called Luna over and said he wanted to talk to her. She looked at him puzzled as he explained he would buy the medicine himself and insisted she come with him, much to her surprise. Ralph mockingly doubted the presence of a demonic aura, and Alicia, shocked by his reaction, declared that her aura was real, and looked at him with wide eyes. Ralph reassured the girl by saying that he had only covered the tips of her horns, and then excitedly told her that he had destroyed a rare summoning block that spawned powerful monsters, and had received an S-rank mystical material for it. The narrative clarified that it was this power that allowed the demons to change shape, and that the material was later transformed into a rare element with its own name and unique properties. Kane expressed doubt about the uniqueness of the fabric and asked if it was possible to create something like this for all demons, but the girl assured him that the item was made from an extremely rare mystical substance. Then Kane asked her to point out what exactly made him do this, since the product seemed to be specially created for demonic horns, and Ralph added that everything would be fine if she always kept it with her and put on the hood as quickly as possible. Kane awkwardly admitted that he did resemble her in some ways, which surprised Luna. She immediately perked up and tried to clarify whether this was true, but he quickly cut her off before she could get carried away, leaving her momentarily speechless. Meanwhile, Kagami Koji and Alice Balnicio exchanged brief introductions, after which the girl admitted that she was terribly hungry and it was difficult for her to think about anything else. Kagami agreed, and then she animatedly pulled him along with her, offering to go somewhere together, as if forgetting about everything except the desire to have a snack. Meanwhile, the short, hooded figure peered anxiously into the busy streets of the human city, noticing how passers-by were rushing about their business and how noisy and crowded this part of the village turned out to be. She noticed the dense crowd and instantly tensed up, realizing that if someone realized that she was a demon, the situation could get out of control, and then serious problems would arise. Later, Kane and Alicia sat on a bench, where he remarked that this dish was usually eaten after a heavy meal, but today was an exception. The girl happily admitted it was delicious, and then the camera cut to her genuine smile against the backdrop of the cityscape. An older man handed the hooded girl a burger, noting that she seemed to like it. The black-haired young man next to her grinned, and she hesitantly accepted the treat, quietly asking if she could really have it. Later, another girl joyfully clutched a bag of groceries, saying that meeting people helps you understand them better. A boy nearby shuddered inwardly, amazed at how easily she'd managed it all. At the hotel, the girl threw herself joyfully onto the bed, loudly rejoicing at the soft place to rest. The young man assured her he would definitely get her home safe, planned to bring her some medicine, and hoped to invite a friend along for the journey. He assured her that he could handle the fight himself, but that someone else would be needed to protect her, which surprised the girl, and she asked if a third person was really needed. She then noted that they would still have to be wary of random attacks from wanderers, and he said that he would be leaving for a short time, after which she asked him to return quickly. Alicia thought about Kagami-san and concluded that this was indeed the right choice. Meanwhile, Luna sat on her bed, reflecting on how difficult it was for humans and demons to coexist, and she had to remind herself of that after recent events. Millie stared motionless at the man who looked at her with admiration and called her a beautiful little creature, which completely stunned the girl. Kane and Luna sat next to each other, and he tried to calm her down. At that moment, a burly man appeared, claiming to be a fighter. Luna was surprised to discover that Takako-chan already knew of his origins. The man said in a soft tone that he would never turn away from such a sweet person, while recalling a distant moment when he was seriously wounded and literally balancing on the brink of life and death. He then offered the medicine to the man sitting next to him and explained that a kind demon had once given him a life-saving drug. The man smiled slightly, then visibly tensed. He reflected that past wars and hatred seemed pointless, now that he simply ran a small club and bar. The girl next to him quietly realized that, in essence, humans and demons really weren't so different. Kane recounted how a customer once walked into his bar and from that day on, a special spiritual connection developed between them. Luna was surprised to learn that this man was a level 999. Someone suggested going to the hot springs, lightly teasing the one who had slept all day. The girl readily agreed, but the boy declined, wishing everyone a pleasant stay and hiding his horns under his hood. The man laughed loudly, teasing Kagami-chan for not liking the bath, which struck him the most, and the embarrassed youth thought that this was the main blow to his pride. Kane stared ahead in silence, then chuckled softly, admitting to himself that he had mistaken the little girl for a boy all this time, watching the two figures disappear into the distance against the dusty road. Meanwhile, the girl remembered her father, and the young man responded thoughtfully to her words, but then narrowed his eyes sharply, catching a sharp sound nearby, as if something had disturbed the peace of the surrounding gorge. Later, the man taught the boy that there was no need for a peasant to fight and expressed the hope that he would understand this, advising him to work quietly and become a skilled tailor, while the young man listened without objection. Then Kane explained that he could easily deal with ordinary slugs or moss-covered goblins by simply throwing a stone, but monsters of level 40 and above already pose a real threat to life. The strong warrior at that moment protected himself with his shield from the beast's blow, noting that such attacks did not work on him, while the boy behind him looked frightened, and the warrior himself emphasized that the peasants truly remained the weakest caste. After this, Kane looked up at the sky in frustration, wondering about the justice of the world and why people weren't allowed to choose their own paths. Then he suddenly noticed a familiar figure and called out to his father, surprised when he suddenly stopped. Kane was overcome with emotion and, pressing his hand to his face, tried to comprehend what had happened, while the man standing next to him watched him with noticeable shock and caution. Meanwhile, Millie inquired about how Kagami was able to reach level 999, while the man noted that she looked too pale, expressing concern for her condition as they moved along the narrow street. The man then explained that if another level 999 user appeared, unlike Kagami, he might try to kill his own father, but, reassuring the girl, he added that no one else had ever reached such a height except Kagami. Then the girl thought for a moment and asked if they were missing something important, and the strong man explained that Kagami-san lacked an important quality inherent in every intelligent being, and therefore was considered the greatest fool. She excitedly asked the tall man to tell her everything he knew about Kagami, while the boy next to him tried to understand what kind of person he was, what he thought about, and what led him to such strength. The man replied that simple questions weren't enough, as getting to know each other gradually was much more enjoyable. The girl, hearing this, reminded them that they'd only known each other for a few minutes. Takako warmly thanked the second girl and promised to get to know both of them better, while the man behind him watched with a kind smile and the blonde girl quietly nodded in acceptance. A little later, a man with a child in his arms pointed excitedly ahead, telling about the hot springs, and another man behind him responded with amazement, trying to understand what was happening and why the place looked so impressive. However, the sudden fall of monsters from the sky dramatically changed the atmosphere. The girl watched in horror as the creatures destroyed buildings, and residents fled the streets in panic, fleeing the chaos. The group witnessed the advance of the Demon Lord's army, appearing in the form of a flock of hellish roosters, causing everyone to be shocked and disbelieving, as no one expected an attack at such a peaceful moment. Luna, confused, asked why all this was happening, insisting her father wouldn't have allowed it. The man tried to reassure her, assuring her there was no need to worry about the city, even though a new monster was already breaking through the walls behind her. Meanwhile, in Valmana, the city of adventurers, a fierce battle was unfolding. A massive creature was attacking the defenders. One man was warning that these people would not go down so easily, and another was trying to get someone's attention amid the chaos. The girl noticed in surprise that the monsters were being thrown back, and the man next to her explained that only Kagami-san was capable of such a thing, which explained the unusual behavior of the opponents. Ralph shouted his intention furiously, rushing forward, determined to find Katami-chan along the trajectory from which the monsters flew away, and ahead of him, a creature with a grunting breath was already rushing, paving the way. Alicia watched in disbelief as the blood boars rose into the air, amazed at their very ability to fly. She noted that all the creatures were moving toward the same spot, and wondered if even a hero was capable of such intervention. Then Ralph, startled, jumped up and hurried forward, assuring his companions that they needed to find Alice and Takako first. At the same time, he watched the commander hovering above the battlefield and pondered how exactly to bring down the enemy. A moment later, he watched in horror as Kane prepared to use a technique rarely used here, dubbed the Wrath of Heaven. Another participant was perplexed, doubting whether the young man had truly decided to do such a thing. Meanwhile, Kane furiously hurled the massive beast and shouted an accusation at the one standing below. The man, falling onto the rocks, responded with a threat, seething with rage and impotence. Ralph and his two companions were petrified with shock, watching the youth lift and toss aside the monsters with such ease. The next second, he angrily demanded that they leave and hurled a heavy object in their direction. Luna, trying to maintain order, insisted on the need to unite and act in a coordinated manner, while Ralph angrily asked what exactly this dangerous impudent fellow was doing and demanded that he stop pretending to be a powerful savior. Kane examined the weapons scattered around, wondering if all those bows, crossbows, and arrows were meant for a fight like this. Then he noticed the mages standing behind him, and Alicia quietly remarked that maybe that wasn't such a bad idea. Ralph, changing his tone, first praised the young man for his impressive technique, then sharply criticized him for trying to kill the demonic commander outright instead of interrogating him. He also noted that the princess's arrows could have done more damage to the city and accused Kane of lacking real experience. Then Kane admitted that, caught up in his opponents, he had lost sight of the city and endangered its inhabitants, and Alicia bitterly agreed with this remark. After a short pause, he smiled slightly, acknowledging that everyone had noble intentions. At that moment, Kane learned that Kagami was incapable of using magic, which left him genuinely surprised. The girl in the witch's hat asked what they should do next, and soon two more people approached, relieved to announce that they had finally found him and checked to make sure everything was alright. The witch then examined the new girl carefully and asked if she was his sister. The dark-haired boy immediately objected, declaring that if she were his sister, she would never have called him by his last name, which startled the fair-haired observer. Later, Kane knelt before Luna amid the rubble, asking if her safety was the most important consideration. However, he suddenly noticed tears on her face and wondered why her expression seemed strange. Luna introduced herself as Kanazuki Kororo of Hexeldoria and expressed doubt that they would be able to fully unleash humanity's power without uniting. The blonde girl quietly repeated Kagami's name, as if trying to gather her scattered thoughts. Kane then explained that there was no need for extreme measures, capturing a specific demon was enough. His companion asked what exactly he meant, and a brief flashback revealed a conversation about trying to surprise the demon lord's troops, despite their weakened state. The group was visibly nervous, so Kane told the witch to calm down and reminded her that the enemies must be defeated. She, seething with indignation, insisted that the demon hovering above them posed an entirely different level of threat. Then Kane thought about it and came to the conclusion that when faced with an opponent with unclear intentions, it is necessary to carefully analyze everything suspicious and be extremely cautious. Alicia noted to herself that the boy knew far more than he was letting on, and he, smiling nervously, thought his sister had risen to the bait. Flora stood nearby, watching them with a sly half-smile. He mused that the demon lord's army had never attacked directly before, and if his father had really fallen asleep on the job, then such sudden aggression seemed too artificial and unlike the usual order of things. It occurred to him that the best thing to do would be to simply rise and ask directly what the enemy wanted. Meanwhile, he stood next to Luna inside the dimly lit stone building, considering a possible approach. Meanwhile, Ralph desperately called out to Takako, who responded with a powerful kick that shattered the ground. He demanded that she repeat the attack immediately, preparing for further combat. Flora, confused and covered in cold sweat, tried to make sense of the chaos in the city, noting that first the monsters appeared, and now people were rising into the air, which caused her to feel fear and disbelief at what was happening. Alicia noticed a bright flash in the distance and worried that someone might have gone too far. She doubted whether this was still a human city, and this feeling made her slightly uneasy. Ralph, angry and confused, demanded an explanation of what was happening, admitting that what was happening completely confused him about the situation. Kane calmly stated that he was simply there by chance, while Alicia sharply demanded to know what he was even doing amid the growing chaos. The dark-haired youth then introduced himself as Kagami Koji and stated that he belonged to the peasant class, with a level of 999. Kane tensed upon hearing this, and the silver-haired man standing nearby remarked that with such power, Kagami could harm even a demon lord. However, to Kane, the very idea of level 999 existing seemed impossible. Alicia, defending the demonic power, furiously attacked the enemy, and then, noticing the rising smoke, tried to restrain herself from unnecessary emotions, advising the others to remain calm. Ralph, shirtless and tense, assured those around him that he knew the demon lord well and had no intention of harming him, while Kane reacted with stunned disbelief, unable to understand how he had survived at all. Kane was surprised to learn that his interlocutor was acquainted with the lady, and the dark-haired youth explained that Ellis was the king's daughter and that he was going to take care of a child who was nearby. He admitted that he was neither enemy nor ally, remaining somewhere between the two. Luna, hearing this, dubiously asked if this meant he had a connection with the demons. The man explained that the demon lord he knew had no desire to destroy humans, reminding him that his daughter had traveled far in search of a cure for his illness. The dark-haired youth doubted whether the order had truly come from the demon lord himself, believing the incident to be an attack. Ralph cried out in shock at the news of His Majesty's illness and demanded confirmation, while Kane wondered whether the order could have been delivered directly or whether someone had garbled it along the way. Serious and shirtless, Kane admitted that he could not leave things as they were, feeling obliged to intervene. The scene shifted to Kane, in the dim light, wondering if the demon lord had actually given the order. The memory showed the demon lord seated on a throne next to Lord Estamar, and Kane believed there was nothing suspicious about such a position. But Luna reacted sharply when Lord Estamar Urgot appeared, confidently declaring that what was happening was a royal order, increasing the tension in the group. A silver-haired, horned demon ordered an attack on the city of Valman, and one observer horrified that the orders might not have come from the true demonic monarch. Kane soared up in fury and destroyed a flock of demonic ravens, tearing their blows apart in mid-air, while a nearby fighter confidently declared that they would crush all of these hellish birds at once. Ralph, smiling and standing waist-deep in a pile of coins, declared that he was incredibly lucky today, while Kane, surrounded by an equal stream of gold, tried to understand what was going on in his head. Kane grew increasingly concerned about the demon lord's illness and sharply accused the young man of conspiracy. The young man tried to calm him down, noting that they were only making matters worse, while Alicia, perplexed, tried to understand what exactly he was talking about. Kane suspected they might have been tricked, but Alicia warned that attempting to confirm his suspicions could put everyone at risk from the demon lord. A large bird circled heavily above them, as if foreshadowing new trials. Ralph, shirtless and looking fully prepared for battle, proposed eliminating the entire attacking force so that Kane could infiltrate the Demon King's castle undetected. Kane listened to his proposal with noticeable trepidation, realizing how dangerous such a plan could be. The enormous griffin, overloaded with prey, struggled to maintain altitude, and one of its companions worried they would fall. However, the other insisted that they carry away the entire sum earned from destroying the Hell Crows, despite the weight and the risk of falling. The massive bird crashed into the ground with force, but Kane calmly intercepted the movement with his foot, held on, and with mocking confidence showed that he had not achieved such mastery by accident, astonishing the observer. Luna screamed as she fell into the center of the powerful explosion, and Kane, against the backdrop of fire, said that he himself could withstand something like this without difficulty, warning that she, unlike him, would have a painful encounter with the reality of this battle. Alicia let out a heavy breath, leaning against the tree trunk and slowly coming to her senses, while Kane, still shirtless and surprisingly cheerful, noted with a smile that she was finally awake and looking much better. The dark-haired man abruptly cut off any further pointless questions, while the fair-haired interlocutor nervously clarified whether he really did not intend to kill the demon, doubting his intentions. Kane, sitting by the tree, unceremoniously called his opponent an idiot, while the latter, standing with his back turned, admitted that if he had no choice, he would do what was necessary, but at the same time noted that Kane seemed to be a completely reasonable person and there were things incomparably more important. He then reminded that Kane was worried about both the Demon King and Ellis, which meant that deep down he was not a bad person at all, as many thought. The blonde girl was genuinely surprised, gradually realizing that Kane wasn't truly hostile to humans. Meanwhile, the dark-haired boy next to her explained that everything around her seemed meaningless because of the monsters who constantly prevented her from trusting anyone. Kane, still naked to the waist, thoughtfully asked Alicia if she didn't find the whole thing tragic, and what followed was a scene of humans and demons hacking at each other simply out of fear of the horns of those they didn't understand. He firmly declared that he would deal with his subordinates and then definitely return for Luna. She, shocked by his risk, watched him leave, and on the way, he promised to visit Ellis the following afternoon. Kane was genuinely surprised that Luna was genuinely concerned about him, but she, embarrassed, explained that she simply hadn't expected him to go that far. He admitted he wanted to check on the Demon King himself, and she confessed that she'd thought he was completely indifferent. Ralph offered to let him join them, provided Alicia was safe. Kane replied that he had a good heart and that Alicia would definitely be happy. The scene ended with someone saying they'd see each other tomorrow. Alicia wondered if it was even possible to understand and live with humans. Meanwhile, another character found the existence of a level 999 peasant absurd and admitted he wouldn't be able to move for a while. Kane, smiling, decided to simply observe the peasant and the stubborn man. Alicia, sitting by a wide tree, wondered if a truly peaceful life was ever achievable. Suddenly, something strange caught her attention, and she silently hoped that Lady Alice was alright, trying to distract herself from her thoughts. At Valmon's tavern, Ralph yawned widely and noticed the other man's satisfied smile. He explained it was gratitude for his words, and Ralph, somewhat embarrassed, expressed his gratitude to Kagami-san. Millie reflected on her pleasure at meeting him, while Kane remarked that he was genuinely intelligent and considerate. Alicia confirmed this, clarifying that she would only be certain of his true qualities once Lady Alice was safe. They discussed the dangers of a hero posing as an ordinary person and emphasized the importance of communication. Someone laughed, recalling Takako-chan's typical behavior as she left to check on her shop. The group stopped on a path near a cliff, noting that many of the surrounding area were emitting demonic energy, and that the horses, not reacting to the demons, were useless for travel in the area. Kane agreed there was no way out, and Luna was worried that the journey on foot would take too long. Millie, however, perked up and suggested acting without delay when a muscular man suddenly appeared and mentioned a vehicle capable of handling demons. On the streets of Valman, a massive centaur looked suspiciously at a man, noticing his lingering gaze, while the girl explained that centaurs are proud creatures who usually do not even acknowledge the existence of humans and pass by with complete indifference. He confessed that he had absolutely no desire to use such creatures, recalling how he always averted his eyes at the mere sight of them. He then explained that these creatures were extreme masochists and twisted monsters, submitting to humans only for punishment. The girl, surprised, admitted she hadn't known about such monsters, and he confidently remarked that he had learned a great deal during his travels to reach level 999. Ralph wondered how a simple peasant managed to reach level 999, a goal that even a hero could not achieve, while Flora admitted that she had long been genuinely curious about the matter. Ralph suggested they try even harder, and the girl agreed, albeit with obvious embarrassment, adding that she'd rather keep it a secret. The young man nearby watched with interest, but was in no hurry to express his own opinion. Kane chuckled slightly, noting that most people would genuinely be interested to know how he'd achieved such an incredible level, and Luna wearily asked him not to look so smug. In the background, people were clearing away the rubble near the damaged building, emphasizing their understanding of the gravity of the situation. He, with eyes that seemed to have turned into yen symbols, told her that he had been raising his level by saving money for a quiet life, and Luna, hearing this, could not hide her stunned reaction. Kane noticed the girl's disappointed look as she admitted she understood perfectly well how important money was. He replied that, of course, it couldn't be said that it was everything, although its value for survival was undeniable. He explained that the reward was only given after defeating a truly powerful monster, and Luna, slightly nervous, asked when that would happen. The story was accompanied by a description of how money was needed for literally everything: equipment, food, lodging, security, and the ability to continue the journey. Kane, smiling, declared that having both money and strength made it easier to endure life's difficulties. The girl, surprised, asked if money could truly be more important than life itself. Meanwhile, he was examining the expensive items in the Adventurers Guild shop and wondering if he could quickly earn enough to buy his own home. Flora was shocked to see an item that cost up to 10,000 gold, and the contents remained unknown until the purchase, which caused even more confusion. Katami was shocked by the warning against buying such an expensive item, as he was immediately asked how much he actually had. Another man insisted that the purchase was pointless, despite Katami's dreams and the fact that the item's true value was completely unreflected by its price. The dark-haired man suggested that the secret of the entire world might be hidden inside and admitted he couldn't forbid the purchase. The girl next to him was visibly worried, fearing that Kagami-san wouldn't take the situation seriously and would steer the conversation away again. Kane admitted that at first it all came down to money, while Alicia, listening, realized she'd initially thought otherwise. He addressed her by her first name, Alice, and added that money was a wondrous, almost incomprehensible force, sparking a new surge of interest in her. The young man asked why coins dropped by monsters were so important to human life, and the girl with the ribbon wondered if it had always been like that, addressing both Alice and Kagami at the same time. Ralph said that he had been looking for them everywhere, after which Kane excitedly called Takako and noted that the conversation should be postponed, since Alice needed to meet with what he called the menu, causing confusion among the others. A passing man asked if they were discussing anything important, but the woman merely smiled softly, saying she wouldn't rush him. Meanwhile, another observer watched them go, wondering if Kane would continue the conversation later. Kane stood alone in a ruined alley, scratching the back of his head thoughtfully, when someone addressed him as Kagami-san, asking how much longer they would have to stay together. On the outskirts of Valman, a cheerful girl called out to Alicia, who responded with obvious relief. The two men watching from afar relaxed, seeing that she was okay. Alicia, holding back tears, explained that she had only attacked the city to protect Ellis's location. Kane tried to reassure her, showing he held no grudges for what had happened. Ralph appreciated the honesty of what he'd said, after which the dark-haired young man asked if he now understood what was happening. Alicia jumped in surprise when someone suddenly called her beautiful, and it suddenly embarrassed her. Millie confidently declared that Takako-chan was not at all dangerous and was even calm about demons. At that moment, the man with long hair apologized for the awkwardness and introduced himself as Mino, and the girl with pigtails accepted his appearance calmly, as if she had expected it. An elderly man sarcastically remarked that someone was being overly bold and emphasized that the person standing before them was a woman, not a man. The other two calmly retorted, insisting that the person in question was indeed a woman, chalking up the remark to another lie and misunderstanding. The man introduced himself as Takako Builda and expressed his pleasure at meeting Rala. Rala, slightly embarrassed, sincerely apologized and extended his hand, demonstrating respect and goodwill. Ralph explained that they needed to hide Alice's demonic powers from prying eyes, so they would have to leave this place. Alicia considered this thoughtfully, while Kane listened silently, trying to assess the gravity of the situation. One of the participants admitted that he had long pondered Elisama's demonic power as he watched the other walk away. He then asked the other if he sensed the source of this power, and was told that this was precisely where the problem lay. Luna excitedly explained that she had received a ribbon from Kagami and, thanks to a special cloth, had been able to enter the city of Valman. Flora, shocked by what she had heard, found it hard to believe that Kagami had been involved. Ralph admitted he'd only been able to craft one such rare item. Kane, astonished, called out to Katami Dano, while Luna quietly inquired if he harbored any contempt for demons. Alicia flared up with anger and declared that she had finally seen his true nature, not hiding her rage and confidence in her conclusions. Flora lashed out at the blonde girl, accusing her of lying about her own sister. She categorically denied it, but the woman in the hat only coldly confirmed her suspicions, heightening the tension. Kane, sensing the growing tension, asked in confusion why the enemies were appearing one after another. Then a group of 6 men formed into battle formation, and one of them ordered the traitors to prepare for conflict. Ralph declared the path ended here, clutching the hilt of his sword. Kane fearfully asked why they were surrounded, noticing 2 strangers behind them, heightening his anxiety. Kane chided Alicia for not achieving any results this time. He then questioned whether it was worth fighting an invincible opponent, while Alicia launched into a furious attack, revealing her emotions. Ralph pointed out to Kane the questionable nature of his encirclement methods, but Kane angrily stated that such tactics did not work on those with power comparable to his own. Ralph declared with fiery determination that someone had to stand up to the villains, while Kane admitted his recklessness but added that at least he was not without courage. Kane demanded that they leave the monster behind and focus on destroying the Demon King, emphasizing that he didn't care at all if they considered him a monster. The other participant in the scene simply gritted his teeth in frustration. She explained that yesterday's attack had resulted in numerous casualties, and Kane pointed out that the Demon King's subordinates were standing right in front of them. She firmly declared that those responsible must not go unpunished. Ralph admitted that he had indeed killed people in the city, and Kane noted that such straightforwardness in his confession was at least worthy of respect. The man asked the girl why she didn't feel the need to apologize. Meanwhile, the serious young man was contemplating the merciless demonic attacks of the past day, while a man nearby gently patted the child on the head, trying to calm her down. Alicia furiously declared that a simple apology was insufficient and that demons threatening human lives were evil incarnate. Kane was shocked, especially when she added that anyone who aided them was equally vicious. Ralph furiously questioned Kane's decision, calling him an idiot. Kane, holding the gun, explained that it concerned his supposed younger sister, while the girl and boy watched the heated argument with alarm. The girl, with visibly excited expression, confessed that she was the Demon King's daughter, and this news shocked everyone present. One of them, stunned, mentally repeated what he had heard, not immediately believing that the heir to the demonic monarch stood before them. Ralph, overcome with anger, pointed out that in all their encounters, no one had ever detected any signs of absolute evil in her. Kane merely suppressed an exasperated cry, sensing the situation growing increasingly complicated. Ralph tried to explain that demons were dangerous to humans only because of their horns, which spawn monsters, but that they themselves were no different from ordinary inhabitants of the world. The woman in the hat stood nearby, listening to every word in complete silence. Kane fiercely declared his determination to protect his demonic friends, clutching the object tightly in his hands. His gaze betrayed his firm determination to yield to no one in this matter. Ralph emphasized that anyone who attacked the city remained a criminal, regardless of their justification. Kane turned away, pointedly avoiding his gaze, while the others watched, tensely awaiting the development of the argument. Kane insisted he was merely following orders, but a small figure nearby mentioned Alice's words about the Demon King's impending illness. This brought back memories of his meeting with the monarch, causing Luna and the others to cautiously ask what he meant by illness. Kane declared that he intended to personally check everything, despite the warning of the elderly man, who was sure that the Demon King did not seek to destroy humanity and hardly gave the order for the attack. Ralph angrily demanded an explanation for his meeting with the Demon King and asked if Kane believed he wanted to exterminate humans. Kane vehemently rejected such a notion, certain he would never believe it. Ralph demanded proof, increasing his pressure, while Alicia moved forward excitedly. Kane was lost in his thoughts, and Flora firmly declared that demons were humanity's worst enemies. Kane asked if the Demon King's army had attacked humans before the recent incident. Ralph, speechless, touched his face, as if searching for an answer or an excuse. He reflected that humans exterminated every demon they could find, yet the Demon King never responded with war. It made him wonder if they were truly fighting for justice, though someone nearby insisted that the Demon King was still their enemy. Flora suddenly unleashed a powerful energy blast, forcing Ralph to panic and dodge the blow. She demanded that everyone pull themselves together, as the situation was spiraling out of control. One participant recalled that Valman had been attacked by demons the day before, which remained a fact. Another suggested that Kane might have been brainwashed, while Alicia insisted that blindly trusting a demon's words was unacceptable. Kane, seeing that his arguments were useless, decided to leave. Luna and Millie watched him warily, aware that tensions between the two sides were inevitably escalating. They suddenly leaped up and ran away, shouting farewells, leaving the others in shock. The group realized they had been deceived, and one of the people declared that if they had continued the conversation, everything would have been cleared up before they parted. Kane stared forward resolutely, while the humans slowly retreated, unable to accept what was happening. He explained that coexistence with demons meant humans had to come to terms with their past and the wounds left by the monsters. Ralph, holding the child on his shoulders, admitted to Alice that the path to a life together was incredibly difficult. Kane bowed his head silently, contemplating the gravity of the choice ahead. She confidently declared that they had been heard for the first time in a long time, holding the head of a man who was smiling with his eyes closed. Another man watched the scene with a mixture of surprise and relief. Ralph promised to stand by Alice's side until she gave in, and Alicia, confused, tried to comprehend his words. Kane, surprised by this decision, asked when it had been decided, and Flora, not hiding her emotion, cried out that she had prepared the carriage in advance. Ralph and another muscular man confronted Kane, harshly accusing him of human insignificance and demanding he stop looking so insolently. Kane responded with anger and shock, standing by the wagon in the middle of the forest road. Luna admitted to stealing items from a passing merchant, allowing the heroes to track them down. Hearing this, Kane angrily threw the cart aside, calling someone a complete idiot and wondering how things had gotten so out of hand so quickly. One of the men demanded to move forward and, gathering his strength, broke through the barrier, causing a sharp cry from the two companions, who instinctively covered themselves from the shockwave and flying fragments. Kane and the girl sat silently next to each other, their gazes downcast, both feeling the weight of what had happened. Nearby, the man trembled, barely audibly apologizing. Then, like a mockery of fate, a drawn-out, eerie laugh rang out over the gorge, and a cart rushed swiftly down the rocky slope, bouncing on the ledges. Ralph reported that the enemies had left, but their reunion was inevitable. Alicia cautiously noted that the monsters remained hateful creatures and she considered it her duty to destroy them without hesitation. The armored knight emphasized that demons plotting human destruction would not be able to escape. Meanwhile, another participant's thought flashed in close-up: if there are demons who desire peace, then everything may be different than it seems at first glance. Ralph called out to someone named Rex, and a woman in a pointy hat reminded him to prepare supplies before the journey, noting that he hadn't even flinched during the chaos around him. Near the Demon King's castle lay the fortified city of San Maria, and the girl gazed admiringly at the towering wall. She told Yagami that the place seemed striking and completely different from Valman. Ralph explained that San Maria was located near the demon's castle and was famous for its strict laws, and the girl assured him that she would support him if he truly wanted to move further along this path. Kane noticed the rider on the centaur and was surprised, while the old man with the beard asked him to keep his distance and not allow himself to be overly familiar. Kane felt a look of disdain on him, and he involuntarily clenched his fists. They arrived in the city to trade and confirmed their plan. Along the way, they recalled how they had found the blue demon's horn and used it to conceal Mino's leak, wrapping the artifact in cloth and carefully hiding it from view. The farmer noted with relief that he was happy to hire reliable guards. The elderly man thoughtfully acknowledged the risk a simple villager was taking for the sake of a successful deal, realizing how daring it was. Kane and the others approached a guard, who warned them about the crowds due to the parade and the dubious possibility of entry. Kane was surprised to hear the word parade, as he hadn't heard about the festival. On the bustling streets of San Maria, a girl happily admired the city while a dark-haired boy paled beside her. He admitted feeling slightly unwell when the girl worriedly inquired about his condition. Ralph asked if she was referring to Valman, who had been injured in the attack. Luna turned to him in surprise, and then another girl reminded him that a few days ago, they had repelled the Demon King's army here and were planning to form a punitive force tomorrow. Kane explained that the Demon King had never launched such an attack before, and that the first attack had been repelled, which should have been a signal. He added that today was a celebration commemorating the defeat of that threat. He pondered the endless cycle of war and vengeance. Luna looked away tensely, while the two knights discussed the danger of powerful demons capable of destroying the squad and descending upon the city. Kane warned that the path to coexistence would likely be destroyed, while others pondered how difficult it would be to stop the punitive forces and whether they would be able to defend San Maria if the demons attacked again. The narration explained that the island of Atros, where the Demon King's castle stands, spawns creatures of incredibly high levels, and there's a possibility that a massive army is already gathering there before the actual attack. Kane quietly agreed with this conclusion. Kane remarked that the demons could destroy the enemies in one fell swoop, and even San Maria wouldn't be able to withstand such a blow. Then Luna admitted that she had an idea about what was happening. He strongly suggested abandoning the idea of a punitive expedition, going straight to the Demon King, trying to convince him of a peaceful outcome, and then leaving with the demonic people, avoiding the inevitable massacre. Addressing the girl, Kane acknowledged her inner struggle, but considered her plan extremely risky. He thoughtfully inquired about her intentions if the Demon King truly decided to destroy all humans. Meanwhile, the man beside her remained silent, merely holding her by the shoulders, as if trying to calm her down. Ralph asked Cain a direct question, doubting whether he could turn a blind eye if his father was truly prepared to wage war. Cain, however, considered that if the Demon King's intentions were confirmed, he would have to act based on this harsh reality. Cain discussed the possibility of uniting the forces of humans and demons who wished to live without fear and mutual hatred. Confidence was evident in his gaze, and a slight but determined smile appeared on his face, reflecting his faith in a peaceful future. He confidently continued to say that together they could gather many who wanted to end this long-standing conflict. Then Cain suggested that such allies would be found if only the search began. Luna and Alicia listened attentively, exchanging rare glances. Ralph expressed doubt as to whether peaceful coexistence between the two sides was even possible. After a brief pause, he asked in surprise if they had already taken the first step. The girl watched the process silently, hiding behind a heavy curtain by the window. Millie resolutely declared her desire to join the united forces. Cain, however, reminded her that such a choice could mean turning against her own father if he truly intended to declare war. Flora passionately declared that she had no intention of giving up on the dream of biracial coexistence. At that moment, someone gently touched her head, and she looked up, surprised and slightly touched, while Cain calmly observed her emotions. Cain supported the girl with the bow and suggested they work together. She nodded eagerly, and then he had to turn to the other girl, inquiring about her intentions and wanting to hear her position. Luna was deeply troubled by her conflicted feelings, her loyalty to Alice-sama and her inability to openly side with her. Meanwhile, one boy called out to Mino, and another man watched calmly as a girl nearby scolded the young man for his stupidity. Ralph acknowledged his own lack of restraint and asked to join their merry company. Cain enthusiastically supported the idea and offered to consider themselves friends, which caused a stir among the others as they prepared to march toward the Demon King's castle. In the Salmaria Inn, Cain lay on his bed, his face buried in the pillow, thinking how soon he wanted to leave this place, despite its pleasant atmosphere. A calm reminder came from the distance to get some proper rest. After the recent attack, the city's main gates remained closed until sunset. The guards were especially strict, making it impossible to pass unnoticed. They had to remain in the shadows and avoid attention. He ordered everyone to leave the city immediately after the gates opened. The girl enthusiastically supported the plan and assured them they would be ready in time. Cain agreed that a large group would require time to gather, which would give them an advantage in arriving ahead of the others. He then marveled at the calm of his companions, as he had expected alarm after the monster's appearance. One man chuckled softly as he watched Cain carry the girl on his shoulders. It occurred to him that the world of humans and demons might not be so artificial and contrived if you looked at them like this, side by side. Ralph suggested they all watch the parade together, since wandering around the city freely was impossible. Alicia, however, hesitantly noted that the moment might not be the best for entertainment. The girl said there was no need to worry about her condition, but the man insisted that Kagami stay by his side and accompany the child around the city. The child protesting this attitude, which he considered too lenient. Luna gazed in amazement at the crowd filling the streets with noise and movement. Cain tried to calm her down and offered her something to eat while she looked around in panic. The cheerful merchant handed the girl a balloon, calling her charming, then offered her bread and roast meat. She accepted the treat with surprise, not expecting such attention from a stranger. Millie excitedly told Cain about the many gifts she'd received from the townspeople. He remarked on her ability to win people over, and she enthusiastically suggested they have a meal together. Cain seemed a little taken aback and asked if that was what she really wanted. Cain was surprised to see Luna keeping a close eye on him, as if afraid to miss a single action. He praised her openness and offered her a snack to recharge before continuing on their journey. Ralph calmly explained to the girl that his self-healing ability allowed him to easily heal minor wounds. He demonstrated the before and after results, and the boy confidently added that thanks to this skill, she needn't worry about his condition. Kagami was genuinely surprised by this, and Luna admiringly remarked on how incredible he looked and admitted that she wanted to be useful to everyone. Kagami agreed that this was why he never looked worn out or shabby. Cain admitted that even before meeting the girl, his belief in the coexistence of the two races had begun to show signs of erosion. However, just a moment later, he suddenly announced he wanted to try some spaghetti, completely throwing her off balance and forcing her to hurriedly catch up. Ralph repeated the name Rex thoughtfully, as if pondering it. At that moment, the boy tried to clarify what Kane had meant earlier, but the girl with the white eyes stubbornly pulled him forward by the hand, unwilling to stop. Ralph scolded Kane with a didactic air about his slow eating, reminding him of the importance of proper table manners. Kane, embarrassed by the pressure, was visibly nervous and unable to concentrate. A menacing crowd of monsters began to gather on the rocky plateau, and someone's alarming voice warned of the impending danger that surrounded them on all sides. In Samaria, Ralph watched in amazement as Kane, addressing him as a commoner, confidently declared that he had long awaited their next meeting and again called him a hero. Alicia was anxiously about to address the peasant, but the waiter politely but firmly demanded a calm tone. Kane, however, believed the moment was perfect for his own purposes. Ralph panicked as he noticed someone had escaped and angrily demanded that they catch up with the fugitive immediately, while the others tensely watched the rapidly unfolding situation. The group realized they'd lost track of him, but at least they knew he was still within the city limits. The girl in the witch's outfit asked Rex what they should do next, while the two companions silently observed her anxiety. Luna suggested alerting the villagers and organizing a general search for the boys. Ralph began to worry about how he would react if he was found, but Kane insisted it was time to stop and let the situation settle. Ralph asked if they were afraid the boy might harm the people who found him. The girl assured them that such a thing would not happen, reminding them that no one had been hurt in the last battle and adding that there was one more important point to consider. Luna expressed doubt that he was truly capable of evil, while Alicia and Flora listened attentively. Then Flora called out to Kuchan, who responded casually, and she emphasized that he was just a guy, not an enemy. She reminded them that he had come to talk, hadn't tried to impose his principles, and hadn't used force to subjugate them. Moreover, when he was attacked without being given a chance to explain himself, he didn't even strike back. Luna was surprised when Ralph explained that he had simply run away. Kane watched the conversation with intent concentration. Luna noted that he usually looked down on people, but now his gaze seemed to have changed. Alicia cautiously pointed out that they shouldn't mindlessly harm others, especially given his desperate escape. Kane thought it was a mistake to corner him, and Luna inquired with disbelief that they weren't slowly becoming allies of the demons. The girl wondered why he was protecting demons and admitted she wanted to ask him about it the next time they met. The boy explained that he had a question of his own to ask. The woman next to him assured him that the goal of destroying demons had not been abandoned. Kane, catching his breath, said he hadn't expected his pursuers to appear so quickly. Luna was surprised, and he explained that they simply kept colliding, as if drawn to each other. He lifted Millie onto his shoulders and checked to see if she could see clearly. Ralph smiled and remarked that he truly had nerves of steel and asked if he still dreamed of going to the festival. Kane, carefully lifting Luna onto his back, apologized awkwardly, but she only smiled softly, and he assured her that everything was fine and that this method of movement was even fun, helping her experience the world around her in a new way. The waitress watched them with a slight smile, as if she saw something touching in the scene. Millie savored a large ice cream cone, slowly licking the melting edges, while he, sitting next to her, tasted his in amazement, trying to comprehend the flavor. She beamed with delight and confessed that people are incredibly amazing creatures, and she wished everyone in the world could experience such simple happiness. Katami and her companions unexpectedly encountered a level 24 monster, and one of the fighters, overcome with alarm, quickly warned the others of the danger. However, the others were already in a fighting stance, ready to accept the challenge and hold off the threat to the end. They stopped at the festival stage, where warriors were demonstrating to the audience how easily they could destroy weak monsters. The crowd reacted enthusiastically until a loud explosion rumbled nearby, causing everyone to tense up and look around for a new source of danger. A huge, furious creature rose from the crumbling rubble, towering over the crowd. One of the group members admitted with a nervous grin that this time they seemed to have unleashed a truly formidable foe, and it was too late to retreat. Several people were screaming in panic for everyone to stay back when a massive monster emerged from the shadows. One of them internally scolded himself for not having had time to accumulate enough energy to use the skill and needed precious seconds. The girl shielded the man with a round shield, holding back the beast's onslaught, but she knew her defense wouldn't last long. She begged him to run as quickly as possible as the monster approached, leaving heavy footprints on the ground. Alicia collapsed to the ground with the man, and he, flushed with fear, cursed, but soon pulled himself together and firmly declared that he had no intention of fleeing. The girl, desperate, demanded that they leave her and flee, as the threat was already looming large. She gritted her teeth and declared that a nobleman's duty was to stand firm and protect his people, not to hide behind them in times of need. The man, kneeling before her in the ruined square, realized there was truly nowhere to retreat. Another girl encountered a huge, roaring monster, and fear paralyzed her. She stood like a frozen statue, watching as the beast lunged at her with fury, tearing the air with its paws. Cain shielded her at the last moment and deflected the threat. He looked worriedly at her trembling gaze and tried to understand what had brought her to such a dangerous place. He greeted her warmly and, turning to the princess, praised her as if appreciating an important deed, after which the girl only blinked in surprise. In the background, someone called out to Kuroro-san, trying to get her attention. Ralph asked with genuine surprise how Cain had managed to defeat his opponent, but he only confidently stated that this was his fate, while nearby Millie excitedly reminded him of his level 999 as an indisputable explanation for any miracles. Cain explained that this was the only technique he could use instantly, and Luna, upon hearing this, was amazed that he had defeated such a powerful enemy with a simple basic technique, which left Ralph quite confused. Ralph said he had a lot to discuss, which surprised Flora and the little girl next to him. Alicia simply calmly noted that she had nothing against the conversation and was ready to listen. She thanked Cain from the bottom of her heart for saving her, waving her arms with genuine joy. He modestly replied that he had only managed it because she had given him a few seconds of respite, and then she explained that she had accumulated enough energy to finish the fight with a single blow. A man running in the distance gestured to the dark-haired youth, trying to get his attention. The woman in the large witch's hat emphasized her neutrality, though she knew perfectly well he would still save the demon, even if it wasn't a demon at all. Cain listened in surprise to the cloaked man, who was excitedly demanding immediate escape. However, he quickly clarified that he wasn't talking about rescue at all, but rather that dangerous monsters were still roaming nearby and couldn't be ignored. One of the men, turning pale, reported terrifying news: a gigantic horde of approximately 10,000 monsters from Elstoro Island was moving toward the city. Dark silhouettes were visible on the horizon, slowly filling the space. Cain and his companions stood wary, assessing the situation. Someone loudly declared that the youth's fate was sealed, while a knight warned that a relentless wave of despair was bearing down on them, and an atmosphere of imminent danger was gripping the city. One of the men, visibly alarmed, reported that the leader of the monsters was moving toward the city, which immediately sparked a surge of alarm among everyone present. Cain, hearing this, was dumbfounded, but another member of the group confirmed the seriousness of the threat, emphasizing that it was not just rumors. A character standing closer to the high ground saw a mass of tens of thousands of monsters approaching from afar. The booming thud and seething darkness slowly encroaching on the city heightened his anxiety as the horde began to rapidly close the distance. Ralph, acting decisively and quickly, ordered Cain to immediately evacuate the residence while he went to search for his comrades. Cain was momentarily taken aback by such a categorical decision, but he knew there was little time left for discussion. Ralph called out to Cain sharply, demanding that he wait, and then suddenly entrusted them with the care of Alice, which came as an unexpected shock. Cain could not immediately comprehend what he heard, and those around him looked at each other, amazed by such trust. Ralph, seething with rage, accused Cain of madness for his intention to raise his hand against the demon, calling them eternal enemies. Alicia, fearful of the possible consequences, desperately tried to stop him, reminding him of the price of such decisions. Cain listened silently to what was happening, while Alicia, with a serious expression, asked if he wasn't afraid of the possible deaths of others. At that moment, Ralph remembered that he had wanted to discuss another important matter with him beforehand, but hadn't found the right moment. Cain appealed to his companions to protect the girl, then gently placed his hands on her shoulders, as if emphasizing the seriousness of his words. Those around him watched him closely, sensing that he was preparing for something dangerous. Millie, looking after him with anxiety, believed that he was acting out of desperation, but Alicia quietly objected, believing that, on the contrary, he had been left alone at the most critical moment, and therefore chose the path that seemed the only possible one. Millie explained emotionally that Kagami truly believed in his companions, and that was why she had decided to trust him too. The girl standing next to her listened silently, as if trying to sort out her own feelings. One of the characters was uncertain about what to do next, another was worried about what the arrival of the monster hunters would lead to. The third tried to reassure them, assuring them that the promise would be kept and that there was no need to worry ahead of time. The girl carefully asked if he was not dangerous after all, but he looked down, showing confusion and some kind of deep inner struggle. Another girl firmly declared that now was not the time for such a discussion and stepped forward, offering to join forces and help the residents evacuate. The figure in the hat watched her silently, but with noticeable respect. The crowd scattered in panic as the monster rapidly approached the city gates. The girl, speaking above the noise, tried to convey the need for an immediate evacuation, mentioning that the gigantic horde was already approaching. Ralph warned them to be careful, then smashed a bottle, accidentally startling a girl nearby. She thanked him, albeit nervously, and several people ran over to make sure she was unharmed and warned her to be more careful. Ralph, noticing the confusion, ordered everyone to step away from Alicia and make sure she was okay. A nearby girl suddenly recognized the new arrivals and, wide-eyed, called out to Takako and Mino, astonished by their appearance. A muscular man approached the group, but someone immediately clarified that they were dealing with a woman, despite her appearance. The man added that the peasant had been sent to find them, even if that sounded absurd. A stern man aggressively insulted someone, while a shocked man with a bandage on his head tried to figure out if the woman in front of him was really a woman. Meanwhile, a man in a hat insisted on Alice-sama's immediate release, while another explained that a farmer had instructed them to keep an eye on her. The man wondered out loud what was going on in the mind of the peasant Kagami, and the armed youth in armor and the girl next to him answered with noticeable uncertainty, as if they themselves did not understand the motives. The dark-haired man with long hair declared that he understood the situation and that they should also look for Kagami-chan. The girl next to him worried that he might have taken a wrong turn, as there was only one road leading to the inn. Ralph, overcome with anxiety, tried to figure out where the boy had disappeared to and lamented his absence out loud. Meanwhile, a nearby man called out to everyone to follow him as quickly as possible, while the others exchanged anxious glances. At the western gate, a man furiously hacked his way through the onrushing monsters, fighting at the very limit of his strength. Another man, out of breath, reported that everyone but this one had long since fled. The girl next to him, seeing what was happening, was frozen with shock. It turned out that a simple peasant had single-handedly held off an entire horde. Millie, terrified to the point of trembling, called for help, insisting that unless immediate intervention was made, the man would inevitably die. The others, including Kane and Luna, looked at her with anxious understanding, sensing the impending threat and their own helplessness. Luna, restraining herself, reflected on how, as long as people hated demons for burning villages, the path to a life together remained closed. And suddenly, she realized that Kagami intended to protect the people alone, even if the cost was mortal. Takako-chan quickly perched herself on the man's shoulders, who declared it would be faster that way, and the girl, watching, remembered how strong Kagami-chan was. But even for him, attempting to face the entire horde alone seemed too dangerous, almost reckless. The girl quickly informed the man that the one they were talking about was almost certainly Katami-san. The man demanded they speed up, explaining that even with his incredible ability to restore life, there were too many enemies. He urged Mino-chan to run across the rooftops to get to the right place faster. The stern man insisted that even speaking of Kagami-chan, it was impossible to handle everything alone. He called anyone who would even try a fool, emphasizing how dangerous the situation was. Ralph, stunned by what he'd heard, asked if anyone was really going to help in this crazy attempt. Alicia, overcome with anxiety, accused the boy of seeking his own death, and Kane asked if she, too, was going to help. Ralph firmly stated that he couldn't ignore what he'd heard, as the peasants' support was now becoming vital. Kane, however, countered, suggesting that the man simply didn't want anyone, human or demon, to suffer, comparing the request to a voluntary step toward death. Ralph pondered the difference between recklessness and bravery. He explained that for Kagami-chan, if there was even the slightest chance to protect the people he cared about, he wouldn't back down, even in the face of a hopeless situation, and that's what makes him the kind of person he is. Cain, nervously clenching his fists, tried to speak, admitting that he understood what was happening well and was also preparing for action. He climbed the slope alone, and the narrative noted his complete lack of fear of his own death, rather, of the possibility of being late. One of the characters stopped abruptly under the stone arch, as if sensing or noticing something. Another called out to him, puzzled by his sudden freeze, while a third watched from a distance, trying to understand the change in his demeanor. The man with long dark hair remained silent, watching the scene unfold. The young man next to him was shocked. He couldn't believe how a peasant could display such strength while the monsters were furiously attacking, trying to crush him. Cain struggled to hold back the onslaught, feeling the powerful blow that pierced his bones. He was shocked by the enemy's strength, and another observer, stunned, couldn't believe Cain was only human, seeing him withstand such blows.